I'm sure in school you remember learning about the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the Norse pagan beliefs, from Jupiter to Zeus to Thor. These gods, these deities were important figures to their peoples thousands of years ago, shaping civilizations, creating a legacy that we still hear of today. But these beliefs later fell to the spread of Abrahamic religion in Europe. The gods of ancient Persia, Ahura Mazda, who was the supreme source of all goodness, the god of the Zoroastrians, and the gods of Hinduism, Shiva, Indra, Vishnu, all of these deities, so distinct and specific to certain cultures, thousands of kilometers apart from each other, developing in their own way with their own mythologies, as well as shaping different societies. But what if I told you that we know now that all of these gods are related? They all come from a singular source thousands of years ago. The Hindu gods, the Norse Germanic gods, the Greek, the Roman, the Celtic, the Zoroastrian gods all come from ancient deities from one culture that spread and is the ancestor of all of these religions. Come join me as we talk about the Indo-Europeans. Who were they and how did they shape the world as we know it today? Have you ever noticed the similarities between these religions? Multiple deities, a god of thunder, a sky god, divine twins, cosmic battles, and the importance of the horse. These are common traits throughout these religions, separated by thousands of miles, different histories, genetics, and languages. How can these people be related? Are they? These pagan beliefs of Europe, which we used to think were in a world of their own, are actually cousins of Hinduism and Zoroastrianism, sharing a common origin. But how do we know this? How do we know that these people are actually cousins? Well, understanding this connection actually originated with the languages that they speak. During the 1500s, European visitors of the Indian subcontinent started to notice many similarities among South Asian, Iranian, and European languages. In 1647, Dutch linguist Mark Zurius van Boxhorn noted these similarities and theorized that they came from a common language that he called Scythian. It wasn't until 1786 when Sir William Jones first lectured on these similarities among Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit at the Asiatic Society of Bengal. He was famously quoted as saying, "The Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either, yet bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots of verbs and the forms of grammar, than could possibly have been produced by accident, so strong indeed that no philologer could examine them all three without believing them to have sprung from some common source, which perhaps no longer exists." This is when linguists started to truly research deeper into this theory. Thomas Young first used the term Indo-European in 1813, and since then we have called this language family, which includes English, German, Italian, Spanish, Irish Gaelic, Russian, Croatian, Greek, Albanian, Farsi, Hindi, Bengali, and dozens of more languages. We call this family the Indo-European language family, going back to Proto-Indo-European, which is a language that we reconstructed based on all of these languages in this family, meaning that all of these languages that I have listed have a common ancestor thousands of years ago, and this is how we can also trace back to the ancient religion of these people. Through the comparative method, scholars have actually been able to piece together what ancient Proto-Indo-European religion might have looked like. The Proto-Indo-Europeans never wrote anything down. They lived thousands of years before writing was invented, somewhere in the Eurasian steppe, the Pontic-Caspian steppe to be more specific. But when you start comparing the myths, languages, and gods of their descendants, you start seeing clear patterns. The same types of gods show up again and again: a thunder god, a sky father, divine twins, a dragon-slaying hero. Even the names sound similar. The Sanskrit Dyeus Phter, Zeus Phter, and Latin Jupiter all come from the same root, Dyeus Phter, meaning sky father. The Baltic god Perkwunos, the Slavic Perun, and the Norse Thor all point back to a thunder god called Perkwunos. These aren't coincidences, they are linguistic fossils, traces of an ancient belief system that spread and evolved as the Indo-Europeans migrated across Eurasia. And it's not just about the names, the stories themselves repeat in different forms. In India, Indra slays the serpent Vritra to release the waters. In Norse myth, Thor fights Jormungandr. In Slavic stories, Perun battles Veles, a serpent-like being. These are all versions of the same story, a storm god fighting chaos, representing the victory of order and life over destruction. You can even see the same divine twins across cultures: the Vedic Ashvins, the Greek Dioskuri, the Baltic Dievadeli, all horse-riding brothers who serve the sky god. The fact that these patterns show up everywhere, from Iceland to India, shows they must have come from something older. So what did the Proto-Indo-European world look like? Their cosmology imagined a flat earth surrounded by a great ocean, with the heavens above ruled by the gods and the underworld below. Their creation myth probably started with the death or sacrifice of a primordial being, one twin killing the other to form the new world. The body of the first being becoming the land, the sky, and even humanity itself. The idea that life and order come from sacrifice and rebirth. Through this kind of comparison, across languages, stories, and rituals, we can actually reconstruct parts of a religion that's over 5,000 years old. And what's incredible is that the legacy of these ancient beliefs still lives on today, scattered through the myths, words, and the ideas of so many different peoples who long ago shared the same ancestors. So who were the Indo-Europeans? Well, if you know anything about genetics relating to ancient populations, you may know them as the Western steppe herders, or the Yamnaya culture. If you are from South Asia, you might know their descendant population, the Indo-Aryans. Aryan was the term they referred to themselves as in the Indian subcontinent, and yes, this is the same term that the mustache man appropriated. Anyways, the Indo-Europeans' homeland was the Western Eurasian steppe, more specifically the Pontic-Caspian steppe in modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. These people descend from the mixing of two hunter-gatherer populations, the Eastern hunter-gatherers and the Caucasus hunter-gatherers, being about a 50-50 split between these groups, meaning if you really think about it, their language and their mythology likely come from the mixing of these two groups, but unfortunately we can't really go that far back to understand what those religions were like. Unlike their hunter-gatherer ancestors, the Western steppe herders were pastoralists, and living in the vast Eurasian steppe, they domesticated the horse, being central to their expansion and mythology. Now let's talk about what their gods and beliefs actually look like. Who did these people worship, and what kind of world did they imagine their gods ruled over? The Proto-Indo-Europeans didn't have temples made of stones or massive statues. They lived as semi-nomadic herders on the Eurasian steppe thousands of years ago. Their religion was rooted in nature, the sky above, the thunder, the sun, the dawn, and the earth beneath their feet. From these natural forces came the earliest versions of gods that would later evolve into Zeus, Thor, Indra, and many more. At the top of their pantheon stood Dyeus Phter, the Sky Father. He was the god of the daylight sky, order, and authority, the one who saw everything from above. His name survives almost unchanged, like I mentioned, in Zeus Phter, Jupiter, and Dyeus Phter in Sanskrit. He represented law, truth, and the power of the heavens. Not so much a personal god, but a divine principle of light and justice. Among him was the Earth Mother, the fertile ground that gave life to all things. They came from Perkwunos, the storm or thunder god, the bringer of rain, fertility, and war. You can see him in Perun in the Slavs, Perkwunos in the Balts, Tyrannus in the Celts, and Thor of the Norse. His weapon was the thunderbolt or hammer. His enemy was usually a serpent or dragon representing chaos, and his victory brought rain and order to the world. The world itself was thought to have been created through sacrifice, the body of the first being divided to form the cosmos. These rituals probably took place outdoors around fire under open sky. Their fire god, who was the ancestor of the Sanskrit Agni and the Latin Ignis, carried offerings to the heavens. The priests or flamens and Brahmins in later traditions likely preserved chants and oral hymns that praised the gods, structured around three functions of Proto-Indo-European society: the priests, the warriors, and the herders or farmers. Through these rituals and stories, the Proto-Indo-Europeans celebrated the same forces that their descendants would later turn into entire mythologies: thunder and light, day and night, sacrifice and creation. Their pantheon became the blueprint for thousands of years of Indo-European religion, reshaped and renamed, but always carrying the same soul: a world washed over by the Sky Father, sustained by the Earth Mother, and kept in balance through the eternal struggle between chaos and order. Between 6 to 3,000 years ago, they spread all over Eurasia, bringing their myths to Europe, reaching South Asia about 3,800 years ago. Their cultural impact still lives on today. It's also very important to note that these religions didn't just develop only from Indo-European tradition. They mixed with the native culture and their beliefs over thousands of years, creating these belief systems. The story of Proto-Indo-Europeans isn't just a story about language or migration. It's a story of how an ancient worldview shaped half the planet. From the cold fjords of Scandinavia to the mountains of India, echoes of their beliefs still survive. The words we speak, the myths we tell, and the archetypes that define our stories all come from the same source: a people who lived thousands of years ago, riding across the Eurasian steppe, looking up at the same sky we see today. Their gods became the foundation for Zeus and Jupiter, for Thor and Indra, for countless deities that carried their essence into the civilizations that followed. Their rituals evolved into the Vedic hymns, the Roman sacrifices, the Norse blots, all different expressions of the same idea. Even now, the legacy of the Proto-Indo-Europeans lives quietly in the background of our cultures. Every time we use a word like mother, father, sky, or sun, we're speaking the descendants of their language. Every time we hear stories about heroes fighting monsters, gods of thunder, or dawn bringing new life, we're remembering the same myths that were once told around their fires. The Indo-Europeans may be long gone, but their voices never truly disappeared. It lives in our languages, our stories, and the shared imagination of the world they helped create.